Alrighty, this is the first episode of Laserdiscotheque. I'm your host, Moyke Baud. I'm gonna go with Moyke instead of Moyke.
Yeah, right. I think that's stuck now.
With me is your other host, the dog himself, Sam Hatch. How you doing, Sam?
Doing fantastic.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me.
This is
Even though it's our podcast.
Yes, that's right. The first in a long line of many, I'm sure. So I would say this is probably the best Laserdisc podcast, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I mean, out of all the others I've encountered so far, this is, quality per minute. This definitely has the biggest bang for your buck.
Yes, it is destined to be the best if it's not already. So the first segment we're going to cover is what's spinning. So what have you been spinning lately?
I've actually been spinning a lot of music stuff lately, and some anime stuff. I got a big stack of things from Kevin Kobos, who is a importer. He lives in Japan and ferries things out to us Americans and Europeans and everybody that want to get their hands on Japanese discs. So I'd been tearing through some Roxy Music discs lately. So that's been my main thing late at night. Though I did watch Slugs.
Slugs,
not too
yes,
long ago.
I own Slugs. What did you think?
Not too bad. There's a little bit of rot at the end of mine because PDO UK pressed it, and I had done a review of the Blu-ray from Arrow recently, and a LaserDisc Forever member said, "Hey, do you want it on LaserDisc?" I'm like, "Yeah, I want it on LaserDisc." So
one of the many benefits of having a popular LaserDisc channel, I guess.
Something like that.
Yeah.
That movie was hilarious. I just loved that they took that kind of Jaws idea of the one sane man going up against all this bureaucracy and trying to save lives. In this case, killer slugs that are possibly mutated and nuclear in nature, and everyone in this town in upstate New York somewhere, they're completely outraged by his nonsense, and they just treat him with such horrible disdain. It's so hilarious. So.
Right, and that seemed to be a theme of the time. It seemed like there was a resurgence of sort of creature feature, attack of the giant. Some sort of animal,
whatever
that was sort of harken back to the sci-fi golden era.
Yeah, man, and the effects were great. I loved the little slug that had tiny teeth in his garden that would bite into his finger and stuff. So and lots of really nasty gore and everything like that. So I thought it delivered on that front too.
Absolutely, and that's something that I sort of love about those because I can't really watch the older movies just because they're a bit too hammy for my liking. But once you hit the 80s and you have that resurgence of that golden sci-fi era of movies, but with that you get the 80s great special effects, so I really love those types of movies. Now I haven't seen Slugs just yet. I did spin through mine real quick just to see if there was any rot, because from what I heard it was a rotter, and mine seems to be clean, so I should probably give that a spin sometime.
Check the outer rim, because that's usually where the PDO UKs start. They start oxidizing out where the glue layer is on the outside, and the last 5 minutes of mine are really, really funky touch and go.
So you can actually see it on the disc itself.
Yeah, it's crazy. Them and 3M are the only plants I know of that pressed, visibly oxidized discs. Because the big rotters like Sony, you can't really tell the difference. It looks perfect to the human eye. But yeah, these things have this bizarre kind of silvered, kind of like a real gray stain look to it. Really trippy stuff.
I'll have to take a look at mine. You mentioned Roxy Music, I should say.
Yeah.
Rocky Music. Some boxing music. Roxy Music. Yeah, that's great. More Than This is pretty much the only song I know of theirs, though.
Hey, man, that's a good jam.
Yeah, it is a good jam. How many songs are on that?
I've got 2 discs I got from Kobos. One live album / this is the video counterpart, came out in 82, and it's got probably 15 16 jams on it. And then the other one I watched was almost a full feature length called was it Total Recall? No relation to the Arnold movie. And it's just a video history of the band, and it's got lots of footage from their old days doing BBC appearances and stuff when Brian Eno was in the band. Roxy Music, for those who don't know, kind of started as this art rock glam band, and Brian Ferry and Brian Eno came out of it, and their big heyday ended up stalling out in the 80s when Brian Ferry went solo, and then they did eventually reunite and played a lot of high profile, sold out, expensive shows in the 80s. But Brian Ferry, I was a big fan of his solo stuff too. He did a lot of great collaborations with other musicians. David Gilmour from Pink Floyd played guitar on a lot of his solo albums, and so it was cool cranking that stuff up. I had never had any of their home videos before, but thanks to Kevin Kobos, he made it happen.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you can't beat Laserdisc for music, for sure. I was spinning the Tears for Fears disc that I got in that lot last night.
Yeah.
And the sound quality is just awesome. I mean,
it was an 8-inch, right?
Yes, yep. He had a whole stack of 8-inch discs. He just kind of popped them out of nowhere. He called them 45s. He said, "Hey, are you interested in some 45 discs?" And I said, "Well, I don't really do much record collecting." He's like, "No, the LaserDisc 45s." I was like, "Oh, yeah, absolutely." So he just kept pulling these things out of the woodwork. It was crazy, but we'll hit that later. But yeah, it was a great disc, and the only thing about the smaller discs is they don't fit as much music on it, but still a lot of great Tears for Fears tracks on there, and it was good stuff. So, plus the Christmas karaoke disc that I spun up was pretty fun. If you're a member of LaserDisc,
there's some footage
Forever,
on YouTube of that.
Sampling of my jams. So if you haven't seen that, go ahead and check it out. And so anything else you've been spinning there, Sam Hanch?
I'm trying to think. I've been watching a lot of Blu-rays. I know that's heresy, but I got a lot of stuff I've had to review lately. So
Shame.
I know. So I've been putting that on the front burner there. But I watched The Net recently. I'd never seen that film.
I've never seen The Net either, and I owned it on Laserdisc, but of course it was rotted, and that will not abide. So
I am on the hunt for a DADC Austria pressing of it, because apparently they're clean, and they did an alternate pressing, and that's going to be my next thing. It was speckled, but still watchable, and I powered through just on 90s nostalgia alone. I was like, I gotta watch this thing, and it was a hoot. I mean, it was one of those films that people, especially in the tech industry, I've seen Wired run pieces about how lame it is and how laughable a lot of the execution of the technology was. But, I mean, I don't know. I kind of got to hand it to him for getting a lot of the overall concept right. One of the big kind of set pieces early on is Sandra Bullock just sitting alone trying to figure out what to do with her night while she does her tech support work on this website, and then she orders pizza through the computer, and everyone their minds were blown.
Oh, absolutely.
And I'm like, I do that now. I'm like, I need to get a pizza, and I don't want to actually talk to humans, so let me just fill out a form online, and they'll be at my door in 20 minutes. And I mean, they got that stuff right, and some of the kind of nefarious, like, evil concepts in the film about a securities firm that sells a program, some sort of software to help keep the company secure, but they are also evil, and then that gives them a backdoor into the company. So I mean, it's all relatively plausible stuff. So, but it's wrapped up in mid-90s cheese, and I love that sort of stuff.
Oh, me too. Yeah, I mean, that was a great era for that sort of thing. There was sort of a internet hysteria at the time. The dangers of the possibilities of the internet were starting to hit home, and so you get all these movies like Hackers and The Net and Ghost in the Machine, even where it just kind of it's like technology turning on us. But Hackers is one of my favorite movies. As somebody who works in the IT field, early to mid '90s, computer and internet type movies really are my thing. So I really need to check out The Net if I can find a decent copy where it's not too rotted. The one I had, it was sort of on that line of unwatchable for me. So I decided to get rid of that. So that's great. Anything else on your end?
I watched Congo. More mid-90s crap.
That's a good pick. I mean, you really can't go wrong with that movie. How do the effects hold up, do you feel?
Actually, a lot better than I thought, and mostly because they went a lot of practical effects. Amy the gorilla is this star of this film, and that's kind of what held it back from being made for the longest time. It's based on a Michael Crichton book, which the book is also just equally meh, but they managed to go ahead with Stan Winston to create this gorilla, and a lot of the other kind of evil gorillas are just dudes in suits, of course. But that was around the time when they were using a lot of CG. Jurassic Park had come out, and movies that shouldn't be using CG were. So that stuff really does not stand the test of time. But the animatronic kind of, Amy gorilla doesn't look bad, really. I
No.
was disappointed in how good it looked because I thought it was going to be a real howler with really lame effects.
Well, for as much hate as that movie gets, I mean, you would think you'd go into it and you'd just see some of the worst effects ever, but they're actually quite good. And
Yeah.
you got Tim Curry, who's absolutely amazing. Joe Don Baker's in there. It's a good
Ernie
time.
Hudson, Bruce Campbell. Yeah.
Bruce Campbell, that's right. I think
Yeah.
it's everyone's wish that he was sort of the lead in that movie, and he doesn't die off in like the first,
What, 5 minutes?
whatever. He dies a
Yeah.
little too quick in that film. In
Way
my
too
opinion,
quick,
but-
yeah.
Okay. So I've recently been spinning Guyver 1 and 2, as many people might know
Yeah.
from my posts. I definitely enjoy Guyver 2 overall better, I think. Guyver 1 definitely has better villains. I mean, you've got the great Michael Berryman. You've got Peter Spellos from one of my favorite movies, Hard to Die, also known as Sorority House Massacre 2. He was also in Munchie, if anybody remembers that film.
Oh,
And,
I rented
Dinosaur
Munchie, yeah.
Island, which that's a great that's a great resume right there. So he's awesome in that. You got David Gale from Reanimator, who's also an excellent villain, and he's got it cranked up to 11 in that film. I mean, he's going full Nicolas Cage on that one. So
Nice.
it's great to see him there. And then of course you have Jeffrey Combs, who also starred with him in Reanimator, playing Dr. East as opposed to Dr. West in Reanimator. So I thought that was kind of a cool callback to Reanimator. But despite the better cast, I think, of the first one, you also have Jimmy Walker, who's rapping. Who's
Dynamite.
He's not the guy actually in the rubber suit, but they're dubbing the guy who is in the suit, and he's rapping, and that, to me, that almost ruins the movie. There's just things about part one that sort of kill it, in the sense when compared to part two. Part two is actually rated R. I believe the first one is rated PG or PG-13. I forget which one. But
yeah.
the second one is rated R, so you got a lot more gore. You got a lot better fight scenes, and although the creature effects in part one are quite good when Luke Skywalker there turns into a giant
Mark Hamill.
cockroach. It's a pretty cool thing. So, but the creature effects are great in part two as well. So,
I
so
never
that
saw
was fun
part
to
two.
spin.
I gotta
Now
check
that's
it out.
based off an anime, as I'm told, by Sean, who's not here, who should be here.
Yeah, I've never seen the anime stuff, and I don't know if it was based on a manga series before the anime came out, but the only thing I ever saw was on VHS, of course, the Mark Hamill live action original, and so now I got to check out part two after your glowing review.
You would actually like part two because it's widescreen. It's not pan and scan. So there you go. It's a widescreen presentation. Now the transfer is terrible. I gotta say it's one of the worst transfers I've seen on LaserDisc, but it's still good. It's watchable. So definitely check that out. It's it's guys in rubber suits fighting each other, and that's about it. So
what more can you ask for?
Yep. So other than that, I've been spinning Heavenly Creatures by the great Peter Jackson.
Yeah, that movie freaked me out.
Yeah, I didn't enjoy it. It didn't strike me as a bad movie. I don't think it's a bad movie. In fact, I think it's a good movie. And I get why a lot of people like it. The effects are great. So the clay people effects they do in that movie are absolutely fantastic, and that was probably my favorite part of it. But just the movie made me feel insane, and maybe that's what he was trying to get across, because you have these two girls who are definitely emotionally not all there. So maybe that was what he was trying to get across, this sort of feeling of insanity, and it was just too much for me. It was just too much. I don't know. It just I did not enjoy watching that, but I get why people do it. It is a good movie. I'm not going to say it's a bad movie. It's just not my kind of movie.
Yeah, I watched it and then went to work the next day, and I felt horrible the entire day, and I couldn't figure out why. And then I realized, it's like I'm having one of those dreams where I committed murder or did something, and I'm going to be going away forever. And then I wake up and realize, thank God it was just a dream. But I was having that feeling in real life all day, and it was because of that damn movie. And I had been sucked into their world so much that I felt like some sort of like sympathetic kind of guilt for what they did. And it's really bizarre stuff.
Right.
It took a while to wash that movie off me.
Yeah. The wife enjoyed it quite a bit, but it has stuck with me. I will say that. So I don't know. Maybe that if that's the intent of the movie, if the intent of a movie is to make you feel awful, and stick with you for a little while. Is it a success? Should I say I like it, even though I don't like it because its intent was for me not to like it? I don't know. It's
it's a weird
it's
situation
a weird
there.
thing. Yeah, I don't think I'd ever watch it again. I think it's sort of like Schindler's List, where it's a great movie and I'll never watch it again. I think it kind of falls into that category.
Yeah, Todd Solondz's Happiness is the same way for me. I watched it once and I felt disgusting after watching it, and
but
I'm never going to watch it again.
Movie, right?
Yeah, but it's like the acting was great. It was written well, and I don't know, man.
Absolutely, I hear you. All right, so if that's all we've got for what we've been recently spinning, now let's pull some topics from the group and kind of talk them out. So Jonathan Augustin Santos talked a little bit about how he got into LaserDiscs. He mentions that one of the big things is that anime sort of brought him into that. And I feel like that's probably a common theme from a lot of people. Would you say, as someone who enjoys that genre of film, would you say that's a common thread that you see?
Yeah, definitely. And that's what got me into it. And it was hitting around the same time when I got into it as when a lot of the big box set special editions like Aliens and stuff were coming out. So it quickly turned into, I want to get those, but it started with me going to conventions and finding VHS tapes of rips of, or dubs of LaserDiscs, and they were all Japanese LaserDiscs of anime stuff, and that was really kind of one of the only ways you can get that stuff here in the States. So I thought, well, why not just cut out the middleman and get these LaserDiscs, and they'll be better quality than these VHS bootlegs anyways. But then I realized how expensive they were to import back then. We didn't have Kevin Kobos, and the discs were insanely pricey. For some of the box sets I have would have cost like $500 back in the day. Then I realized there was all this cool domestic stuff coming out that wasn't anime released and or based, and then I said, well, let me just start collecting those instead and just pick up a couple things here and there. We did have some US anime releases, but it wasn't like the amazing amount of stuff that was available from Japan.
No, you probably just had the more well-known stuff like Akira and stuff like that. And
yeah,
definitely. He also mentioned influence from your videos on YouTube. That also seems to be a pretty common thread. I'm starting to wonder if we should start blaming you for the increase in LaserDisc prices.
Why can I just be thanked for enhancing the LaserDisc Forever group membership amount? But oh well, yeah, I guess I'll take a hit or something like that. But I try and pimp the group as often as possible. So
no, it's a great thing.
I think they owe me at least $1 or $2 in ad revenues. But
that's right. You should talk to Brendan and Sean and those guys. They might owe you some money. They might owe you a check.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Well, that's part of, I kind of got into LaserDiscs myself, just kind of seeing them in a store, but then watching your videos on top of it definitely drove that, whereas, I might have just picked a few up and thought they were just these funny little discs. Watching your videos, I actually saw a channel called the Lazy Gamer, or no, what is it? Lazy Game Reviews. He does these thrift store pickup videos, and he picked up a bunch of LaserDiscs, and that also got me into it. So definitely YouTube is influential in driving some of these hobbies, I feel. So it's a great thing, though. When I told a friend of mine who's not into LaserDiscs that our group had about 5,000 members, it really floored him. So it's a great thing, though.
It's pretty impressive, yeah. And I feel bad, though, when I get feedback from people that do get into it because of the excitement of all the YouTube videos out there, and then they end up not enjoying the discs at all, and they're like, the video quality sucks.
Yeah, that's a big filter. For people who are I feel people who are in the group and who are buying discs, they are really, you're not going to find people who are just shelf collectors or non-fans, because once they see that video quality, if they continue after that, then you've got somebody who's actually a fan of the hobby. So
yeah, you're in for life.
Yeah, in for life, definitely. Although with that being said, and while some transfers are pretty bad, for me, I don't know, maybe it's just my setup, but I think LaserDiscs actually look quite good for tech that's that old. That was kind of around the same time as VHS tapes, because I remember VHS tapes being horrific as far as video quality goes. So So I actually feel like it's a very acceptable level of quality.
Yeah, I don't know what people are watching them on all the time, but I've got a CRT Sony at work, and I've got a player, and I have to kind of give this preface to just regular Joes who kind of watch movies with us at work sometimes, and nobody has ever complained about the video quality ever. Like nobody says, "Oh, this looks like VHS," or "This looks horrible. Let's go." Yeah, everyone just kind of accepts it as pretty much DVD quality, and then they just roll on. So yeah, I think it really depends on your setup and how you've got it hooked up and what player you've got, etc. Because yeah, I've got no complaints on my end. So.
Absolutely. Around Christmas time, I was running some Christmas LaserDiscs on our TV in the living room, and people were sitting around watching it, and the disc flipped, and it kind of shocked them, and they didn't really know what was going on. And once I explained to them that it was on LaserDiscs, they were quite surprised that it was on LaserDiscs. They thought I had been streaming it from like Netflix or my Plex server. So I think they were somewhat surprised by the quality of the disc itself, of the picture. So it's always great to see people's reaction who aren't into LaserDiscs, to show them that the quality is quite good.
And some of those late releases are stupid good.
Oh,
and
yeah.
if they had done more squeeze discs where they anamorphically enhance the disc towards the end, yeah, a lot of that stuff would have given DVD a run for its money. So they just kept getting better and better at encoding discs. So.
And you talked about that a little bit on your live stream a little while ago. Somebody asked the question, do you think LaserDiscs get a bad rap? Because a lot of people, you mentioned some of those articles that people tend to put out where they talk about, the pitfalls of LaserDisc, and, video quality is definitely something that gets kind of blown up. They kind of act like it's just rubbing dirt in your eyes when that's far from the case.
It's weird because, it's not like LaserDisc is posing any threat against Blu-ray, but it seems like there's this bizarre bias where they have to go above and beyond and come up with these bizarre scenarios, like I mentioned, like that they're impossible to lift because they're so heavy, and the side brakes being such it ruins your entire day, that sort of crap.
Yeah, your comparison to those infomercials was very astute. That's what I feel like every time I'm reading one of those articles. I feel like somebody's struggling to take the lid off of a jar. It's just one of those things.
Yeah, I really want to film a fake like Blu-ray infomercial or something, and kind of do a real life enactment of all those bizarre complaints about LaserDiscs. And
definitely, I would definitely check that out. Okay, so the next topic, David Sherman, he talks about how he always wanted LaserDiscs as a kid, and the cost sort of prohibited him from purchasing them at the time. But now that it's cheap, he's finding himself buying them and players. And do you feel like that's something common among a lot of collectors these days? Is it one of those things where it was they were sort of envious as younger adults or children, and now that they're can be had for cheap, that now everybody's jumping into it, and maybe that's the cause for the sort of resurgence of LaserDisc?
Yeah, I've actually heard that from a lot of people writing in on my YouTube channel. A lot of people say that they either were just too young to buy anything themselves, and they just saw it over a friend's house, or their dad or their uncle had a player, or it was someone that was of age to be part of the LaserDisc buying demographic, but they just couldn't afford to get a player. And now that the floor is kind of fallen out from under the whole hobby, they can run in and snap up box sets for next to nothing. And that's kind of what's driving me too, just because so many things I couldn't afford back then. Now I can get super cheap from guys like you who sell me box sets.
Absolutely, and you're kind of in a unique position compared to a lot of people in the group, whereas you were buying these things back in their heyday, back when they were still largely in use. Not many people in the group can say that. We're sort of late to the party, and we're buying everything now that it's cheap, but you were actually buying it when it was not so cheap. Tell me a little bit about that. I'm interested to hear. How did you afford it back then?
Yeah, it's weird because I hear people say that only rich people could afford LaserDisc back in the day. So, but you could say only rich people and people with poor life decisions and poor money management could pick them up. But it was very I had to pick choose my battles. If I had my way, I would have had every James Bond movie on LaserDisc. So I still had a pretty hefty collection, a couple hundred titles. Maybe 300 titles back in the 90s, but it was, I'd try and find deals if I could. Sometimes you can find used discs. Laser Craze in Boston used to sell used discs. Columbia House helped out because you can get the 3 movies for a dollar, and then you get some discounted releases after that. But mostly, yeah, it was just I was do I want to eat? Do I want to have a delicious meal, or do I want to go to Suncoast and buy 3 laser discs? And usually it was the latter. But yeah, it was definitely a pricey hobby for the most part. But I just had one player, and that was on clearance, a Sony MDP 333, and yeah, so it wasn't like now when we're all going and snapping up players left and right and all that sort of stuff. So I was stuck with what I have, but I loved it. Yeah, it was great.
Awesome. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about so David Sherman. Or I'm sorry, Wes Kerwin. He recently posted a choice between 3 movies, and he was asking which one he should watch. The choice was between Shortcuts, Blade Runner, and Seven. I chose Blade Runner, which is the obvious correct choice out of this, but you chose Shortcuts. Care to explain?
There's a reason behind this. I've actually stopped giving my answers on my favorite movies because Blade Runner and Seven are 2 of my favorite films. I love David Fincher, I love Ridley Scott. So those obviously would have been the answer. But I do like Altman films as well. And Shortcuts I saw back in the Laserdisc heyday in the 90s or whatever, and I haven't seen it since. But it's a really kind of interesting, one of those sprawling epic stories where not much seemingly happens, but it's just a ton of different characters, and all takes place over a very short amount of time, and you kind of see how their lives all start to interact and connect. Kind of like Krzysztof Kozlowski's Three Colors series, where at the end you kind of see how everything kind of ties together. And it was a real interesting flick. So now when everyone like yourself, you started doing here's 3 movies, choose. Yes. I kind of go for the vibe of the night. I kind of feel like what's my vibe? Like what the cosmic kind of energies being put out? Like what movie would I watch at this time, at this night, right now? And at that time, at that moment, I was in a Shortcuts mood. So it wasn't because it was better than the other 2. It was just because I'm feeling some sort of energies combining, and they're all saying watch Robert Altman's Shortcuts right now. So.
And absolutely, and it's funny because a few times, when I've posted those, when you have, posted in there, I'm kind of going with the vibe. Here's what I think you should watch. Whenever that movie, that sort of, that what the vibe was, when that movie gets chosen, I seem to have a better time. So I think there's something to that where, if it's a, Saturday night, it's, not much going on, sure, X may be a great movie, but Y, feels more like it's appropriate for that situation. So I think there's definitely something to be said about that.
Yeah, there's like Friday night movies, Saturday night movies, but then there's also like if it's a late, like after 1 o'clock, you can start getting a little bit more adventurous, and it just feels better. Yeah,
have a bit of a fever dream choice, some sort of weird 2 a.m. movie.
That's when it's time to watch the David Lynch movies for sure.
Yeah, absolutely, there you go. All right, next topic. Shea Kostika, hopefully I'm saying that right, posted some of his collection, and he's got a lot of late releases, and not only 1, but in some cases 2 or more. I saw a couple copies of Blast from the Past in there, a couple copies of Thomas Crown Affair, and he said that in some cases he's got more than 2. So I thought we could take this chance to talk about Laserdisc hoarding.
Yes.
Recently, I got that large lot, and a big part of that lot was a pretty hefty collection of full moon movies, which, as you know, I absolutely adore. I own the entire full moon catalog at this point, but I was tempted, I will admit, to keep those extra copies of the full moon releases just because I love them so much. It was very hard for me to actually sell them. So how do you feel about Laserdisc hoarding? Is there any sense in keeping doubles as backups, or is that sort of not required in this hobby?
Yeah, I personally don't. I mean, there may be a couple where I've received backups that, and I don't know, maybe like for a period I had 2 copies of the 7 box set, but I did end up selling one of them. And then, I think I had a couple bonus copies of RoboCop and things like that. But yeah, I usually just keep the 1. But I mean, when you do get a big lot, it is weird because the logic goes out the window for a little bit when you're looking at all these things, and especially if they're in really good shape. And it's almost like you've been able to time travel back to a store,
Right.
and they left the door open, and you just were able to loot
Load it up.
LaserDiscs, and now they're all in your collection. And so there's that illogical desire to hold on to all that stuff, because one, like, how often do you get these things in your hands in such good condition and all
Right.
that stuff? And so then all of a sudden I'm like, well, maybe I do like, this horrible movie, or maybe I do want more old classic movies. And that happened with me with the those MCA Encore editions. I never cared once or twice about the Encore editions, and I picked a bunch up in the lot, and I watched one. I'm like, wow, this transfer's really good, and I think I'm gonna keep all these Encore editions. And but I still try and balance that with, do I really want this? Pan and scan is usually the deal breaker.
Sure.
Even if it's something I'm like really interested in checking out, finally I'll be like, I'll dump it, and then I'll get a widescreen version somewhere down the line.
Right.
But yeah, there's that impulse that tries to take over, and it is kind of like a little bit of a battle. So I can see how that can go too far, and somebody can then now have 3 or 4 copies of something just in case one breaks or rots or something like that. But yeah, I personally wouldn't go that far.
Do you think it's wrong? Do you think there's a moral issue involved where you're sort of keeping discs away from people who don't have a copy at all?
I think about that a lot. Especially the people that pick up discs and they're sealed, and they never they either want to frame them, or they just never intend to do anything with them. And then I kind of get outraged by those. I feel bad because I watch just about every LaserDisc video on YouTube, and I always get excited when I see someone breaking out a lot, and then all of a sudden when they're like, I don't have a player, I'm never getting a player.
Oh no!
Then my finger gets away from the mouse. I'm not going to click the like, and then if there was like a middle finger button, I would click that instead. And I feel bad because they're making LaserDisc content, so I love that, but I just can't make myself like it, because it's like, you're actively keeping this stuff out of people's hands. So
yeah, it kind of annoys me too. I think that when you collect anything, be it LaserDiscs or glass cats or whatever it is, there's sort of a hoarding mentality that comes along with it. So you're not, if you were a minimalist, you probably wouldn't have any of these collections at all. So I think it comes to sort of metering out that impulse to keep those discs. I did end up selling those Full Moon discs, and now I'm sort of struggling with the Star Wars Definitive box set that I got, because I do have the Japanese version. So I'm trying to decide, do I keep both in case I watch the US version and find that one of the discs is rotted? Then I still have my Japanese one to back up to. I don't know if the Japanese one is prone to rot like the US one is or not, but
I don't believe it is. So
I don't think it is either. So
I'm
I'm kind of thinking, do I keep that and dump the US one? It looks clean. I spun a few of the discs, but that thing comes with so many discs that I just haven't done them all yet. So I'm sort of struggling between, do I keep both? Do I dump one of them? The nice thing about the US version is the book is in English, so that's nice. Not the Japanese one, it's not in English. And I had somebody suggest that I just swap the books. I keep the Japanese one and swap the books, but I can't do that. I've got to keep them stock separated. So
stock.
So that's something that I'm struggling with right now, and I'm still not sure which way I'm going to fall on that.
It's funny because when I saw the video, I remember you had been hot to trot on getting the Definitive Collection for the longest time. So I saw it in your pile, and I'm like, oh, he's going to be over the moon on this one. And then you're like, I don't know if I'm going to keep this. I'm like, what?
I picked up the Japanese version of the Definitive Collection not too long ago. I was shortly after you and I when you had one for sale. There was some speckling on it.
Just jizz.
Yeah, it was just jizz. Okay, well, you should have said that. I would have bought it. I love DNA on my discs. That's why I have all those.
It wasn't mine though.
Discs. So that's something I'm struggling with right now. Hopefully I come to a decision, and maybe I can supply somebody in the group with either a Japanese or US version of the Definitive Collection. So we will see. All right, so that's it for topics from the group. Let's talk about recent pickups. Have you picked up anything in the last month or so?
Yeah, I actually just went on a horrible buy yesterday too.
Horrible? Is it ever horrible?
It was a waste of my morning for the most part. It was a bunch of guys were talking about this W.A.S.P. Laserdisc. W.A.S.P. is a band.
Yep.
that was very shock rock / heavy metal. They had a song called, can I swear on this podcast?
Oh, absolutely.
They had a song called Fuck Like a Beast that was very classy.
Also
and,
the name of my autobiography, funny enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I've read the early draft of that. And Blackie Lawless was the the leader of the band. But yeah, they had a live disc that was a Japanese import, and a bunch of guys were saying, "Oh, I really want that. I really want that." And just happened to see a Craiglister had a copy of that and a couple other things, and I'm like, well, what the hell? I don't mind going out for road trips because it was just a state away, not that far. And I was like, if you guys really want that, I'll go pick it up. And my buddy John Froelich from the group was interested in getting it, and one of the other guys. And so I said, all right, I'll go and see if this guy's got some other stuff too. And he's like, oh, I got Iron Maiden, Live After Death. I'm like, cool,
nice.
I'll grab that. He had a couple Star Trek discs that I wanted to fill in the gaps of my Star Trek the Motion Picture collection. And I was like, all right, cool. I'll pick up a couple things from him and go out there. And I went out, and the only one that was ended up being really salvageable was the W.A.S.P one. It was an X rental, so the disc itself was pretty well scratched and worn. I played it through. It plays fine, but it was just a little beat. The jacket and everything was fine. It still had the cellophane on it, which I tore off.
Sure.
But then the other discs were apparently basement classics, and I don't know what it is. New England in particular, you get a lot of basement goodness here. And, I thought they were okay, and then luckily they were cheap, but when I got home I found black mold on the inside of the jackets, so the jackets went in the trash, and the discs were also, a couple of them were warped.
Oh, jeez.
So I kept the disc just in case I need a spare or a backup or something like that. I'll flatten them out, but it ended up being almost a total write-off, so which is always a bummer when that happens.
Yeah, the only way that could have been worse is if it had been a stack of CEDs, I think. So that's pretty bad.
That is the worst.
Yeah, it's the same thing in New York. The first lot I ever bought, and I think this is one of the reasons why I seem to run into so many issues with rot, is because I think the first lot I bought was about 300 discs strong, and so many of those were rotted, and I think the reality is they were probably kept in a basement somewhere or an attic where, it was probably 100 degrees during the summers here, and negative 20 in the winter. So those extreme temperature fluctuations tend to ruin discs. So I think that probably is what led to my my rot king status. But
yes.
But now that I've got a lot of those, cleared out, and I've got this new lot that came in today, which everything is in pristine condition. And it's funny because a lot of the times when you see a collection, you see a lot of people leaving the plastic shrink wrap on it, and that's a sign of somebody taking care of their collection. Well, this guy had no plastic shrink wrap on any of his discs, and they were all in complete mint condition. So, and what's even better is none of the discs in the lot have the elephant condoms that I've seen so far. They've all been replaced with the paper and plastic lined sleeves. So that's really good. So that's our perfect segue into talking about the huge lot I picked up recently.
Yes.
So there was a Craigslist ad for, it said that there were a couple players and some discs. That's all it said. It said it was in the free section, and so as soon as I got that alert in my email, I emailed the person and said, hey, I'm interested. I'd come pick it up. Now, it was about an hour drive from where I was, and I was at work. It was the middle of my work day. But as I complain about often, not a whole lot comes up in the New York area. So when you see something, you got to jump on it. Now, the problem with things coming up in the free section is that people that don't even care about LaserDiscs are also watching those sections like a hawk. Some people make it their job to watch those free sections like a hawk, and they run out, buy things, and then they sell them, and that's kind of their job. So I have to be really quick. I recently lost a lot similar to that. Well, I don't know if it was that big. A lot of times when people post things to the free section, they're non-specific. But it was a bunch of discs for free down in Ithaca, New York, which is not too far from here. But even though I'm emailing, as soon as I get those email notifications, by the time I email, they're usually gone because somebody has pounced on it. So when I emailed the person, they replied back. I've gotten a lot of responses, but if they back out, it's yours. So desperate to finally get a lot after almost a year of not getting one. I said, hey, that's cool, but if you do want to go with me, I will give you some money for it. I didn't say how much. I just said I'd give you some money. So they said, because I was persistent and because I was quick in responding, that if I wanted it, I could come pick it up. So the problem was the person who posted the ad wasn't actually the person with the LaserDiscs. It was the daughter of the guy who had them. He's not very tech savvy, so she was kind of running interference for that. So I had to wait for this guy to call me and set up a time for me to come out and get it. And the time between, the last email and waiting for that call was definitely nerve-wracking. And this is without knowing how many discs, what the discs were, or even what the players were. So just to show you how desperate I am to pick up a local lot. So finally the guy called me, and we were talking, and we set up a time for me to come get it out. And right before we hung up, he said, you might want to bring a few boxes and a friend to help you, because I kid you not, there are over 1,000 discs here. Wow. And at that point, even though it was the middle of the workday, he said it was fine if I came later that night, but I said, nope, I'm on my way now. I'll be there in about an hour. So I borrowed a work van, hopped on over there, and met him there. So, and there was a ton. Unfortunately, I couldn't get a friend to help me, so I had to move it all myself. So that was, I tell you, back-breaking work. If you ever want a good workout, just move your discs around. That's pretty much all the workout you need. I was definitely sore the next day. But anyway, I get there. He brings me down to the basement. Now, at first, I'm like, oh, great. These things are kept in a basement. They're going to be in terrible shape. But as I get down there, and there's this entire train village filling the entire basement. He's got, this little train thing set up. Huh. And as soon as I see that, and I see that the basement is climate controlled, it's nice. I was like, ooh, this could be good. So then under the tables where he's got this tiny village on, he's got these shelves running underneath, and that's kind of where he has all these discs, lined up. And of course they were vertical, they weren't horizontal. In fact, he warned me of that. He said, about stacking these things horizontal, right? And I was like, yep, not to do it. And so as I was carrying things up, that's when he started saying, oh, do you want these DiscoVision discs? Do you want these 45 LaserDiscs? Do you want, I've got 3 players here and 2 boxes, and while I was doing all that, he was looking for the manuals, and it was just amazing. It took me all day, but getting to pick up these huge stacks, carry them upstairs, and while I'm walking up the stairs, I'm looking at the titles. It was just the greatest experience of the last year, as far as LaserDiscs go. So it was a fun time. Wow. There was a lot in the lot that wasn't really my taste. A lot of it is older movies, which, as you know, I'm not much of a fan of. But he also had a great horror and sci-fi from like the 80s and even up to the early 90s. He had a lot of cartoons, a lot of things like that. And as a parent, I love those because I get to watch them with my kids. So a lot of good stuff there. But the stuff that I don't like, hopefully I can hook up people in the LaserDisc Forever group and hopefully give some people some good deals.
Line your pockets, as they say.
Yep.
Yeah. Exploit us all.
That's right. But anyway, it's probably going to be one of the last lots I pick up, because at this point now I'm dealing with a space issue. I'm almost full up on my shelf, so I got to figure out how to do some math and get the most use out of that space that I have now. So
it's when I meet those old collectors, usually 9 times out of 10, they're completely out of touch with the reality of the market now, and they just want thousands of dollars for it, and they just will not give up on that. So it's pretty amazing that there was a guy out there just who actually knew what LaserDiscs were and was that savvy about it, but was just cool with just get them out.
Yeah, it was a weird thing. He was telling me the story about how he got into it, and it sounded like as soon as DVD came out, he kind of just stashed his LaserDisc collection and started buying DVD, and it never occurred to him to try to sell the LaserDiscs to sort of fund his DVD habit, but he just kind of put them on some shelves and left them there. So I was thankful he did. I've tested all 3 players. All 3 work awesome. Usually, I get nervous when I see more than one player, because that tends to tell me that, okay, one broke, so they bought another one, and that one broke, so they bought another one, and they just didn't throw them out. But all three of them are, not only are they in mint condition, but they all work great. I didn't have to do anything to them. Usually, you know, if they've been sitting a while, you have to do something to them just to get them up and running, but I didn't have to do anything, and two of them come pretty complete in their boxes, so it's pretty amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah, I just met a guy, or contacted the guy on Craigslist who had about 250 discs, all commons. You know, apparently treated well, but he wanted $1,000 for them all, and I'm like,
oh yeah,
no thanks.
I got a guy local here who's been posted he's got an S1, which is actually not badly priced. He's got it at $220 now.
That's
which
not
I don't
bad,
think is a bad price for that. I wouldn't pay it because it's a single-sided player, and I don't really have an interest in that. But he's an older guy. He's in his 80s. He can't sell it online. I did offer to help him. I told him I would, do the packaging and shipping for him. And I did make him an offer of $175 just because he's listed it for like months now. And I feel bad that it's still sitting out there. And it's a great player, for a single-sided player. So it kind of makes me sad to see it sit there for so long. So I just threw an offer of $175 at him just to so it would come to somebody. But then he's got like a stack of discs, and they're all commons or opera discs, and he wants like $300 for them. We're talking less than 100 discs, all commons or opera, and he wants $300, like I think $200 or $300 for him. And I'm like, dude, it's not gonna happen.
I just ran into a guy with opera discs recently too, and he was so excited about them. I'm like, yeah, they are cool, and like if you were an opera fan back then, I guess that was amazing, but those things there is just no market for them at all, really.
Yeah, I was starting to think, like, okay, maybe I just don't know about opera discs. Maybe there's this weird niche market of super fan opera laserdisc collectors that's like that I don't know of, and these discs are very valuable. But then I looked them up on eBay, and I was like, oh, nobody's buying these.
No, I mean that niche market moved on to high def, and they have not looked back apparently. And there's the ones that go out to the movie theaters to watch the Metropolitan Opera HD broadcast.
Yeah.
Apparently they do not care about laserdiscs.
No, they have moved on. But he did have Yanni live at the Acropolis, so maybe it's worth $300. I don't know.
It's an eternal classic.
It is. It's worth its weight in gold.
As everyone knows.
Sure. So
yeah.
Other than that, I picked up Guyver 2 and The Borrower from Discount LaserDiscs. There's your plug, buddy. All right,
nice.
Hope you're happy. He got a little upset I didn't plug him in the group, so he's got it now. But yeah, so I bought those two things. The Guyver 2 was a really good deal. I got that for like $10. But he had a minimum for shipping, and so I picked up The Borrower because I've been looking for that quite some time. It's sealed. So I haven't watched that yet, but I know of it, and it looks like something that I would thoroughly enjoy. So that's it for me. Anything else for you?
Yeah, I got a couple things from group members. I got The Mask, that 3D black and white Canadian movie, which I have not watched yet, so I got to fire that up.
What is that? Is that the one with the 3D glasses?
Yeah.
Oh, I got 2 copies in that lot. That's really strange. I'm gonna be keeping 1 copy, but I think I'm gonna sell the other one. I'm not sure why you had 2 copies of that, but that's cool. That's awesome. Did you watch it? Did you say?
Not yet. I got to check it out. He actually sent it because he was a fan of the channel, and he's like, I'm gonna send you something cool. Hopefully you don't have it.
That's awesome.
And no, I didn't have it, so it was way cool.
That's awesome. Does that happen a lot? Do a lot of people get in contact with you and offer free discs?
Now it does. Yeah, not like on a daily basis, but or just people that like will reach out and let me know that they have things that I mentioned I'm looking for. Like Alan Labrie, shout out from the group, saw my video where I was complaining that I didn't have the last Close Encounters box set, and he's like, I got that. And he saw my recent pickups, and he's like, well, if you'll trade me like 7 of these discs or whatever for it, then you can have it. And I'm like, all right, cool. So the kind of deals kind of make themselves now. People reach out and say, I got a player. Do you want it? That's
awesome.
So, starting to become a thing.
Do you feel like it's getting to the point now, though, where people are sending you things and you're running out of space, and you're starting to get overwhelmed by the number of things coming in?
Thankfully, not yet. But if that does become an issue, I guess, I don't know. Donate them to laser charity or something
charity.
like that. But space is definitely an issue. We'll have to
start that up.
Bring that up in a future podcast because these things do take up a lot of room.
Gotcha. Perfect. Okay. So that's it. That's all I have. Anything else on your end?
No, just Yeah, it's been interesting watching, like as you mentioned, the group, the Lasers Forever group, getting bigger and bigger, and interesting seeing, more people. It seems over the past couple of years getting excited about the format.
Absolutely.
So it's pretty interesting considering there was a long period after DVD had come out where you didn't hear much about Laserdisc at all. So in fact, just popular cultural references to Laserdisc seem to be cropping up more and more. And there's the well-known Ryan Reynolds mentioning Deadpool coming out on Laserdisc, and most of the time it's played for a joke, but it does seem to be building some sort of traction, and it seems it's going to break through, and the hipsters are going to embrace it, and then it's all going to go to hell pretty much. But enjoy it while
But
it lasts.
does that mean that they are going to start up factories again and start making Laserdiscs?
Yeah, that's definitely another topic I think we should get into, because I think that's a pipe dream.
Yeah.
But let's go ahead. Let's dream
I'll
that
tell you
dream.
what, I'll post in the Laserdisc Forever group. See what they think. See if they think that Laserdiscs are going to make a comeback. Hasn't been done yet.
Yeah.
All right, so that is the first episode of the Laserdiscotheque podcast. Hopefully you all enjoyed yourselves.
Yes.
And and
I know I did.
If you do, let us know, and we'll make more. Maybe Sean will join us next time.
Maybe that slacker.
Alrighty.